of this date that we have set for the hearings, and we have on our agenda a few items, a stipulation agreement, and then some time for Sheriff Colby, should he like that, to follow up on last month's discussion, and then any other general discussion that we have. Although before we begin, I do want to recognize and hope for the speedy recovery of Captain Gray. We had that incident that occurred on Friday of last week, which was somewhat horrific, to say the least. And we hope for his speedy recovery. Are there any additions or deletions to the agenda? I have none. I'm hearing none. I think we'll move forward with the stipulation agreement. I will defer to Councilor McManus to present the agreement and the nature of that before we move to action.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. This morning, there is a stipulated agreement before you regarding docket number 2020 HSV. The allegation against the respondent officer is that while he was processing a driving under the influence offense, and prior to completing the charging of the offense, the respondent learned that the driver had 2 prior convictions, thus turning this DUI into a DUI third offense, which is a felony outside the scope of his authority. The respondent had a level 2 certification at the time. And by way of background for everyone on the council, just a reminder that the scope of practice for a level 2 officer is limited by statute in Title 20, Section 2358B2B. There's an enumerated list provided in that subsection that provides the scope of crimes that a level 2 officer is allowed to investigate. Within this list, it is noted that level 2 officers are permitted to investigate any misdemeanors set forth in Title 23, which is our motor vehicle section of Vermont statutes annotated. But there's an exception in there for driving under the influence cases, snowmobiling under the influence, or operating an ATV under the influence. However, to investigate driving under the influence offenses, level 2 officers are allowed to investigate DUIs if they have completed DUI certification, which the respondent had done. He was DUI certified. However, the DUI certification, while it allows a level 2 officer to investigate, again, driving offenses, snowmobiling, or ATV, driving while intoxicated or under the influence, excuse me, nothing in the DUI certification permits a level 2 officer to investigate a felony offense. Essentially, the DUI certification training does not supersede the limitation that level 2 officers have to not investigate felony offenses. The case before you, so that's way of background, the incident before you, the allegation is that the respondent, while doing his investigation, had allegedly multiple moments during his investigation where he was informed that the driver had 2 prior convictions. At this point, the level 2 officer's responsibility would be to call upon an officer certified to respond and assume law enforcement authority over the incident. This would be a level 3 officer in this case, and he did not do that at any point during his investigation. And this makes it a Category C violation, that he intentionally exceeded the scope of his authority. Per the agreement before you, the respondent officer acknowledges and does not contest that if this matter appeared before the council at a hearing, and that if the council accepted the evidence as outlined in the notice of hearing, as well as additional evidence that would be presented at a hearing, that the council could find that he intentionally exceeded his scope of authority. The respondent agrees through this agreement to the sanction that has been recommended by the Professional Regulation Subcommittee, and that is that his certification be revoked as of today, but that he be allowed the option to recertify by enrolling in and successfully completing a basic training course at the Vermont Police Academy if he so chose to do so. On behalf of the respondent and the council, I ask that you accept this agreement today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Counselor. I think everybody has the packet, and then just as a reminder, the Professional Regulation Committee does not vote and participate in the action. I'll open the floor for any discussion about the agreement. I see Sheriff Anderson's hand is up.
I might have to defer to Kim on what the purpose is, but I'd like to make a motion that we go into executive session to discuss this matter. And I'm sure there's an exception on 1 VSA 315 that permits this.
If
Counselor?
Yes, and Attorney Lawrence, feel free to jump in as well. But if we are discussing the facts of this disciplinary matter beyond what has been provided in the notice of hearing, I believe that we would need to go into executive session so that we're not essentially having a pre-hearing.
That's correct.
Having said that, Chief Frank.
I'm prepared to make the motion. I
Okay.
move to enter executive session to discuss unprofessional conduct complaints and investigations which are by law confidential and may result in disciplinary sanctions imposed on a subject officer's certification, the premature general public knowledge of which would clearly place the council and the subject officer at a substantial disadvantage.
Okay, so moved. Do we have a second? Seconded by Sheriff Anderson. Okay.
Are you
Do
inviting
we need to
anyone else?
invite?
Oh, yes, we need to invite Wesley Lawrence into the session. Lindsay is our recorder, and Executive Director Brickell.
So amended.
So
I
amended.
agree.
Okay. Agreement on the by the seconder. Okay, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Raising hands. Any opposed? Same sign. Seeing none. Karen, I saw, was that a late yes or a no?
No, I'm certainly not opposing. I'm questioning the role of the subcommittee members in executive session. My understanding is that we do not participate in executive session.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay,
That's
thank you.
correct. I'm watching Lindsay to make that. Do we have the session set up, Lindsay?
Yes, I just sent out a link for the executive session for the members that are present.
Okay, let's, the motion is passed. Let's move to executive session. I gotta get there. There yet. Hang on.
Hey, Kim, just so you're aware, your microphone is on. I love the music, but
Thank you.
sure.
I was just going to send her a little side note asking for a particular tune, but thanks, Ken.
It was that toss up between asking or not and just letting it go on. And, it was great.
I thought you'd be in executive session.
I was not invited, so here I am just humming away.
Oh. Huh.
Oh, thank you, Ken.
At least you're not at home. You could have been having a sidebar with the dog.
This is true. You could have heard what my neighbors hear, which does not put me in the best light. Oh my goodness.
Who's representing the subcommittee in executive session if you're not there, Kim?
Well, Wesley's there to answer any legal questions. I mean, they really
Okay.
shouldn't be, I mean, it really shouldn't be a going deep on the facts, even in executive
Uh-huh.
session. There just may be a few legal questions there.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's not like arguing for the
Yeah.
case, so to speak. So,
Okay. Well, goodness. We'll see what happens, I guess.
yeah. Oh,
Here
folks
they
are coming
are.
back.
Technology almost ate me. I got back. Hey, Lindsay, if you could let me know if you think we're all back.
Gotta get everybody on one screen here. And
This is great. We have a lot of cameras on today. I enjoy seeing people. No.
okay, we're all
Okay.
set.
We're all here. Okay. We have returned from executive session. I believe we are now prepared to publicly vote on the stipulation agreement. I will entertain a motion to accept the agreement as presented. Sheriff Anderson, I think.
So
Is that
moved.
so moved? Okay. Do we have a second on the motion?
I will
I'm
second.
looking. I heard it, but I didn't see it. So
Mike
did you
O'Neill.
get it? Oh, Mike. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mike. Okay. I'll move to vote. All of those in favor accepting the stipulation agreement signify by saying aye or raising your hand.
Aye.
Okay. All of those opposed, the same sign. Seeing none, the motion passes. The stipulation agreement is approved. Okay, thank you. I see a hand up by Amanda.
Oh no, that was my voting hand. Sorry.
Okay, yeah, I saw it floating around and it reappeared again. Okay, thank you. The technology's great and sometimes entertaining. Okay. The second item was at the last meeting, or after the last meeting, Sheriff Colby reached out, and as you know, I was not available for that meeting, and there was some limited discussion by Sheriff Colby, but decided that it would be best if to allow Sheriff a few minutes if to be formally on the agenda if he wanted to discuss the FIP policy. So I think we'll move to that item, and I don't know, is Sheriff Colby online? I can't tell just yet.
Good
Yes, sir,
morning.
he is.
I see. There we go. Okay, Sheriff Colby, the floor is yours.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity. I just wanted to ask the council a few questions. So when we received this policy and we started looking at how it applies to us, I think one of the issues that I haven't addressed with the council is the uniqueness of Essex County. So we have a border patrol station in Essex County, which is in Canaan. Our contracts are very limited in the northern part of our sector. When I say that, our law enforcement contracts are very limited for the number of hours that we provide up there. Our primary entity that responds to emergencies in the area is Border Patrol. I understand that the policy itself does not limit those interactions, but what I'm really struggling with is the council's intent to limit communication with federal authorities. And I honestly am trying to figure out the way that I can train my officers to understand what those limitations are by the policy that you've created. And that's really my struggle. I want to be in compliance with what the council is asking us to do, but I really can't interpret the way that the policy is written, what you're actually telling us that we can't communicate with federal authorities at what point. And so in the revisions that I created to the policy, if you go back to statute, they talk about essential elements of the policy, and the essential elements of the policy that the council has created. I don't understand from the response that I have gotten what those essential elements are regarding communication. And I think that's really what I need to be able to craft a policy that we're going to be able to understand on a day-to-day in the field, and be able to have our officers understand when they walk out there. The policy loops back, and it doesn't make sense to me. That's the challenge that I'm facing right now. And that's why when I did put the time in to try to create revisions to the policy that would meet what happens with us in the field day to day. The reason that I'm here is recently we had a lawsuit filed by the ACLU. The lawsuit is not specific to the policy, but what it is specific to is it's specific to the PRA looking for violations of the policy. And I need a better understanding of what the council is trying to restrict communications to be sure that we don't do that in the future. My understanding thus far has been that we're not supposed to get involved in civil immigration investigations, and we have been doing that. The language in the policy creates too much deviation from that and is open to a lot of interpretation. And so I don't know that there's anywhere that the council has actually identified what those restrictions are so that I can explain them on a day-to-day to my officers. That's honestly the issue that I have with the policy, and why I have tried to create revisions to the policy that we can understand, that make sense to the officer, and that, again, when I responded in my letter, I was responding to the response from the academy that said, this is a communication that's not allowed. And I still have not and cannot understand from the way that the policy was written what communications are not allowed. And with that, what the reason is that those communications aren't allowed in relation to FIP. And so that's first, that's really the essence of why I'm here. And then the reason I came back to the council is when you read the statute, it talks about the council being responsible for making these determinations. And I understand that the council itself can say, these are going to be the people who we have do the review of any agency policy that comes forward, and that together you'll work together to come up with a plan to create a policy that works. And so I don't feel like I've gone through that process. And when I first got the letter from Attorney McManus, I didn't feel like it's a council position. And I'm asking for a council position because everything in statute talks about the council. So I don't know whether the council has voted to have a subcommittee or a subdivision of the council that makes a decision on whether a policy is in compliance or not. I don't know whether that's a system or a process that's been developed. If it is, it's not one I've ever read. The other part of that is your council members have given me different answers. I've tried to talk with who I believe would be my representative, which is the director for the state's attorneys and sheriffs, and he won't talk with me about it while it's under review. And yet at the same time, I'm getting an email back telling me that it's not under review and the council had decided at its last meeting. So I don't understand the council process that's clear for where we even are in the process of a review for my policy, if that makes sense to you, the way I just described it. So really what I would like to do is I would like to continue to try to create a policy that's in compliance, that my officers can understand while they're in the field. And I'd like to understand what those essential elements are in the council's policy that are applicable to us in the field.
Okay. I think that's a set of questions. A lot of them embedded. I think I will turn to our counsel. Tim, you have your hand up. You were mentioned.
And Sheriff Colby and I have chatted a little bit, and what I told Sheriff Colby was I essentially wanted to avoid what I viewed as maybe like an ex parte communication between me and just the sheriff. And that's why I had advised him to sort of direct everything to the full group. And so with respect, Sheriff Colby, I just wanted to let folks know that I wanted them to hear directly from you rather than liaison through me. And also I'm sometimes in this position when I'm on groups, working groups and study committees, et cetera, where I'm trying to represent either the majority or sometimes the position of executive members of 28 separately elected individuals, plus an executive director's office, which is in statute. And so sometimes I struggle with that. I think some of you have sometimes seen me struggle with that, but I figured, and there's a train going by, I'm sorry about that. I figured the best advice to Sheriff Colby was for him to talk directly with this group rather than essentially through me. And secondly, I had worked on the subcommittee, and so I signed off on the policy and was in favor of it. And so even though it wasn't, as we all know, wasn't exactly maybe how I would have written it, I was in favor of it. And I think the savings clause in the policy provides for the communication that would be needed. That said, I know we have a new staff member at the academy. I'm seeing Lisa on here. And I think this is a great opportunity to, sometimes it works for 1,300 police officers, but if it does, but it also needs to work for the rest of the folks too. It needs to work for folks so they can understand and do the training. So just wanted to explain sort of my position. Can sometimes be a bit awkward representing the department, and statute is who I represent, which sometimes can be a little bit amorphous even for me. So hopefully that was helpful in terms of the communications that Sheriff Colby and I have had.
Some context. Chief Frank, your hand's up.
I just wanted to see if maybe we could reframe this a little bit. I know sometimes it can be frustrating when folks have worked towards a shared agenda and goal, and then having folks who run contrary to that. Thank you, Sheriff Colby, for trying to figure out how this works, right? How does this work, and applying this to my agency? How do we make these unique complexities work? I do think, though, you posed a lot of questions that probably this is not the best forum for doing that. While the council itself should have a response to that, I would probably recommend that the best use of all of our time and to make sure that we're providing an articulate response would be to list these questions maybe in a written form. Like, it was unclear. What can I say? Well, there's a lot of things folks can say and can't say. Let's be more specific. And so maybe listing these questions in a very clear written intent of could I say this? Is this permissible? We can use some examples and exemplars, and then trying to understand the content and the reason can come through. But I don't know that this forum with a lot of different folks, some who have different levels of experience of working with the policy, is probably the best format to do that in. And so I just wanted to throw that out there before we started to delve into the weeds of, yes, you can say this, or no, you can't in this meeting, if that is a tactic or an approach that folks think would be successful. But I do want to applaud you. It can be very challenging to say, hey, I disagree with something that statewide has been accepted. And it is not because I don't necessarily agree with the concept of it, but I just don't even know how to apply it. So I want to thank you for bringing that forward, because it shows you really are working with this policy and trying to figure out how to meet the spirit of that. But with that in mind, I don't know that this is the best forum to do that, even though the council is responsible. So if folks or Sheriff, if you thought it was helpful, I'd be happy to sit alongside you, the council, or somebody else, or a different representative of your choice, to say, what are these specific questions and how do we break them down one at a time to try to answer that? And I just wanted to throw that out there before we got too far into trying to address specific questions that were presented.
Yeah, thank you, Chief. I would agree. The full body is not the place to do this. I don't think it's a very productive use of our time. Although, again, I'll emphasize what the Chief just noted. This is an important conversation. You raised some important issues about how to interpret on the ground, if you will, in a much more granular way. This policy is scheduled for regular review, and the next review, I think, will be starting. It could start at any time, actually, but 2025 to meet the requirements. And I think with the committee, this is a good input on what revisions to that policy might need to be, or in addition, collateral. As Chief Frank mentioned, maybe specific examples. What can you say? What can't you say? How do you react in particular situations that may be less than clear? And certainly understand the variability and your jurisdiction in particular, as you described earlier in your comments. So I think, it would be great to engage. I think I heard Chief Frank volunteer to help with that. Engage in working through some of these items in discussion with the committee and a smaller group. But certainly thank you for bringing. I think it's important to bring these issues up because I wasn't involved. As you know, I'm new, relatively new, and had been reviewing the policy too, and I could see where there's some level of complexity there. That opens the door for questions, particularly given the situation is not the same for folks around the state. Karen I see your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. A couple things. I do want to reflect on the original letter from Sheriff Colby that offered his statement that he would be filing suit against anybody who voted in favor of this policy. And so I want us to be cautious. My agency would not love it for me to be sued because of my participation in council. I want to remind council members and all of you on the Fair and Impartial Policing Committee, remember that we've spent 2 years on this model policy, that we vetted it across the state with in fact, with the Sheriff's Association and with the Chiefs Association. And while I can understand that the policy is complex, I'm a layperson and I found it a little bit difficult to understand, but I actually asked peers and others to help me understand it and got really clear on it. And that would be my question for Sheriff Colby is, has he consulted with other sheriffs who are not having the same kind of issues in interpreting the policy? I also understand that as a border county, there are special conditions there, but I agree with the idea that this is not the place, support Chief Frank's assertion, this is not the place for us to go into delve into detail about how one agency would implement a policy that is around the specifics of implementing the policy within that agency. So again, I just want to remind folks that the original letter from Sheriff Colby questioned the legal veracity of the policy, which was vetted by the Attorney General's office, and also threatened to sue all of us who've signed off on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Chief Frank, I see your hand back up. Chief Frank, can you hear us? Oh,
I think she froze.
she's frozen. Okay.
Sorry, can folks hear me?
Yeah, we got you now. Yep, we got you.
I wanted to acknowledge this. There's a lot of complexities to this with any statewide policy. A statewide policy, for example, let's take it out of this realm, on mental health. Different areas have different resources available. Some might be able to take that same policy and apply it differently because they have 24/7 mental health resource coverage, and others have to apply the policy differently. So we recognize Sheriff, we recognize there's some unique challenges to this. I guess I would reach out to you and kind of put it back in your court. Do you feel comfortable reaching out with a small select group who could look at some of the concerns that you have for implementation, not concerns with the policy? And I want to be clear on that. I myself was a participant in this policy creation, and while it's not written entirely how I would have ideally liked to have seen it either, I think there was compromise amongst all of our different groups. So that conversation would not be about how to change the existing policy, but how does that actual implementation look? Is that something that you feel would meet the needs that you have moving forward?
So several different things. Yes, I believe that I'm happy to sit down with anybody who's willing to look at the policy and hear the concerns that I have to be able to weigh those issues. I think that one of the issues that I'm up against right now is that the information that I've received back from several folks is, hey, if you don't adopt a policy, you're mandated to you failed to adopt the policy. So now by statute, you have adopted this statewide policy, which is not working to resolve a creation of a policy by an agency where we're working together. So I do like the idea of working together rather than being subject to a mandated policy. I think that's part of what the statute recommends is what occurs. And so, yes, I agree a subcommittee would be appropriate. I don't think that I threatened a lawsuit. I do think that I said that it's a violation of criminal statute. So that's a different nuance in my mind. And I think that being able to resolve this and get to a place where we can have a policy in our agency that we can follow, that I can understand, that I believe is lawful, and also that complies with the council's policy, makes sense to me.
Director Burkell, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to just point out a couple of things regarding the policy. As you so poignantly put it, there was a lot of time and effort spent on this policy by a lot of folks, all of which had representation to their law enforcement counterparts. And while I recognize that Sheriff Colby does have a very specific different need where he polices folks and or where he provides services, I think it's also incumbent upon every agency head to be able to, digest policy when it's statewide and find a way to implement it rather than potentially change it to suit the needs of their specific area. There, in some brief discussion that I have had with Sheriff Colby and Kim, I think there were some circumstances that he brought up that he felt he couldn't do, which were totally appropriate and would not have been a violation of policy. So I think it's a matter of understanding what the policy does and does not say. And part of that understanding or coming to some conclusions is being a part of that process that has taken 2 years rather than becoming a part of that process after the fact, which then creates this difficulty for the sheriff as well as the council. And I think by statute, yes, we do want to work in partnership with agencies to help them become compliant, but compliant with the council policy that's been voted and adopted, not to us for us to assist them in creating their own policy that is somehow morphed into a different policy that suits their needs. I feel personally that that's an obligation that the sheriff has to check with legal counsel if he's creating a different policy that has different language, and confer with us and the Attorney General's office as to whether that policy meets compliance or not. And that's what he did do, and that's what we did do from our perspective. It's just I think it's a fine line for when we start saying working in concert with agencies to get them into compliance, not to create a policy. That's what we need to keep our focus on. And lastly, just another point to mention is that I don't want to downplay the sheriff's concerns. This is one of the largest concerns that we have in creating what will be the mandated FIP training for 2025, which has not been created yet. It's due come January, and we're going to be late in creating what that training looks like, specifically for these reasons, to make sure that we're articulating what those differences in the policy from the last to now, making sure that officers understand it, trying to weave into that some scenario-based car stops for things that happen in real life, so that there is a real world application of that process to ensure that the training is as best as it can be for officers and agency heads to know that what they're doing is either okay by policy or not okay by policy. So again, I will not offer anyone here in this meeting, but those that have an interest in being a participant or a trainer in that, we would certainly welcome those discussions, because there are several things that we want to hit, several markers, but one of those is critically important, which is making sure that agency members understand the policies, that there are not violations of the policy. That's the ultimate goal. So we don't want a violation of the policy. We don't want to infringe upon people's rights, and we want to make sure that there's a clear understanding of the policy. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Night.
Thank you. Go ahead, Chief.
I was gonna say, and I feel like I heard that from Sheriff Colby. I feel like I heard him
Yeah.
saying, we have this policy. I don't know how this works in our current existing agency. Help me to better understand that. So I'm happy to help work with my knowledge that I can provide on that. And I think there are others probably. What would be helpful, certainly on this end, I think, is Sheriff Colby, if you could specifically articulate what those concerns are, maybe in a written form. You gave us a lot, and so I just don't want to miss anything, so that we can help with the implementation there.
Yes, that's what I'm hearing. I think the opportunity is upon us, and these are all great observations. And I think the council wants every agency to be successful, and certainly understands your situation. So, with the training being developed, as Director Brickell noted, the timing is perfect to get those concerns into the discussion on how to interpret the policy, and then the behaviors that can go around it, fill in around it. As well as I mentioned earlier, that the policy is required to be reviewed, so it's not a static. It won't ever remain in perpetuity. There are opportunities to clarify, and the next cycle of that is coming up in conjunction with the training and the development of the training. So there's some great opportunities, and it looks like some folks here with the law enforcement from the law enforcement community and experience in implementing this are here to help. So yeah, I would encourage, as Chief Frank had noted, providing that list, if you will, or some kind of written form of where the specific implementation points and concerns are. And there's a group of folks here, I think, that are willing to help address that. So I think it's been a good discussion. I thank you for coming back and clarifying that a little bit for us.
Thank you. I don't feel that I've gotten the answers, but thank you for your time.
We'll continue to try to get those answers. Karen, comment?
Thank you, Chair. I find myself feeling a sense of consternation. This is a policy that again, took 2 years to develop, that was vetted thoroughly within the law enforcement community. And what I would hate to see is that before we've even stepped into the next phase of implementing the policy, that we're contemplating changing it. I do think that we will have lots to learn once this policy is actually implemented and trained on. I think that we will have the opportunity to come back and make solid amendment, but I think it's premature for us to consider making amendments to this policy at this moment. I want to reiterate what Executive Director Burkell said, that what our commitment today could be is to ensure that all of our agencies have the tools that they need to be able to implement, and we can provide them with lots and lots of support. But I would truly hate to see us step back into rewriting this policy that, again, we vetted through all the law enforcement agencies in our state, as well as our chief law enforcement agent, the Attorney General. And so I just felt important for us to really notice that we are stepping into the possibility that we are going back to the drawing board on this policy. And I'd really hate for us to do that at this point before it's even implemented. Thank you.
Just to be clear, I'm not part of the Vermont Sheriff's Association. So the only person I would have been receiving this policy through would have been the state's attorneys and sheriffs. And until the policy passed, I was not aware of your revisions. Actually, I became aware of the revisions when a reporter called me for comment, which is when the ACLU asked me for copies of 2 years worth of my records. That's when I became aware of what the recommended policies by the council were. So I have not been involved in the vetting of the policy, just to be clear.
Susanna.
Sorry. Hi, I wanted to say that I completely comment, appreciated them, and I'm not going to read it. She stated.
Susanna, we can't really hear you.
We can't
Sorry.
hear you very well. Yeah.
Oh, should I shout?
Closer to the mic, I guess.
Okay, good. That's yelling is my favorite thing. I'll do that. I wanted to say that I completely agreed with Karen's remarks. I'm not going to reiterate them because she stated them perfectly, but I fully believe in everything that she's just articulated. Notwithstanding the current comment that we just got about not having been part of that association, I think that this is something that we've had extensive FaceTime and written time with a number of people in the profession, and I think Vermont is small enough that there certainly was opportunity for people to be able to engage with the group on this. I feel really confident in the work product that we've created, and I'm prepared to stand by it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Susanna. Okay, I think we're ready to wrap up. Thank you, Sheriff Colby, for coming and contributing to the discussion and raising a number of issues. We'll move on to the next agenda item. Well, we don't, general discussion item. So do we have any other items? We didn't have anything else on the agenda. I want to thank everybody. We're coming into the holiday break. So I hope everybody has a good holiday season and break, and we'll be back January. It's a little bit later. The first of the holiday is the 1st. So I think, correct me, Lindsay, the 8th is our meeting. Okay. So not only is it holiday break, we get another extra week between meetings this time around. Is there any other comments for the good of the order, observations that we'd like to make? Announcements of any kind? Can be a slow time of the year, so hope we can catch up on our work and have a little time off. Great. I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Unless we want to keep going. Tim?
Motion to adjourn.
So moved and seconded by Tim. Okay, all in favor? Signify by saying aye. It looks like it's a claim. Let the motion pass by a claim, and we'll see everybody on January 8th for our next regularly scheduled meeting, if not before then, for other committee and council activities. See you then. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.